Charlie Munger. He is Warren Buffett's closest partner and right-hand man, and he's basically the reason why Warren Buffett is so rich today. Charlie Munger changed the way Warren looked at businesses and the way he invests his money. He went from buying cheap, average businesses to buying good quality, fairly priced businesses. The question I asked myself was this: what investing principles and stocks made up the portfolio of Charlie Munger himself? In our video today, we will explore the unique concoction of investments that have lifted Munger's profits to the astronomical height he sits at today. His net worth is $2.7 billion. And I'll give you a hint: Charlie Munger does not like diversification. Charlie has a personal holding of only 3 stocks. Now you should watch the whole video, as we will also cover the 4 other companies he's invested in through the Daily Journal Corporation. The 7 stocks and investing principles we cover in this video could very well be your own ticket to financial success. Let's dig in. Charlie Munger is often mentioned alongside his other famous friends you may have heard of, Warren Buffett. The two have dominated the stock market with relentless dedication to certain investing principles, and they continue to see success to this day. Few other investors have been quite as effective at sticking to the idea of value investing as these two. To understand the driving force behind Munger's peculiar portfolio, one must understand where he came from. Since his youth, Charlie Munger exhibited a clear understanding of mathematics and statistics. This led him to consistently excel across many disciplines, from card playing to stock trading. Early in his career, Charlie was the chairman of the Wesco Financial Corporation. Before being acquired by Berkshire Hathaway, Wesco had accumulated over $1.5 billion in equity from companies such as Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, and Coca-Cola. While Wesco's holdings were quite extensive, Munger's personal holdings would not follow suit. According to his strategy when playing cards, it's necessary to fold early when you doubt your hand. Inversely, if you have a good hand, bet and bet big. This philosophy has undoubtedly bled into his holdings, which is apparent by the fact that he manages a particularly narrow portfolio. You often hear that diversification is the name of the game, but Charlie Munger doesn't see it that way. He aims for a small list of big bets that he has complete confidence in. This is the type of portfolio that some investors would lose sleep over, but Charlie has been sleeping soundly as his coffers fill up further each day. We're going to let Munger and his partner Buffett explain this in their own words.
The students of America go to these elite business schools and law schools, and they learn corporate finance the way it's now taught, and investment management is the way it's now taught. And some of these people write articles in the newspaper and other places, and they say, well, the whole secret of investment is diversification. That's the mantra. They've got it exactly back-assward. The whole secret of investment is to find places where it's safe and wise to non-diversify. It's just that simple. Diversification is for the know-nothing investor. It's not for the professional.
And there's nothing wrong with the know-nothing investor practicing it. It's exactly what they should practice. It's exactly what a good professional investor should not practice. But that's, there's no contradiction in that. A know-nothing investor will get decent results as long as they know they're a know-nothing investor, diversify as to time they purchase their equities and as to the equities they purchase. That's crazy for somebody that really knows what they're doing. And you will find opportunities that if you put 20% of your net worth in it, you have wasted the opportunity of a lifetime, in terms of not really loading up. And we've had the chance to do that way in our past when we were working with small sums of money. We'll never get a chance to do that working with the kinds of money that Berkshire does. We try to load up on things, and there will be markets when we get a chance to from time to time, but very seldom do we get to buy as much of any good idea as we would like to.
So what are these companies that gain Munger's trust to the point where he feels comfortable investing millions upon millions? We'll divide them into 2 groups. Let's take a look at the Munger personal portfolio first. The largest slice of the pie is made up of 167,050 Costco shares. In the past 5 years, Costco stock has risen from roughly $170 to an impressive $485 at the time of this video. Charlie and his family's funds have been holding it for much longer, and the return was just as lucrative in years previous. His holdings in Costco represent 4.1% of his portfolio. Why does he love Costco stock so much? There must be a reason for trusting the company with such a large chunk of his family's wealth. Apart from the business strategy and financial standing, Costco represents one of Charlie's most vital investing principles: invest in highly ethical companies. Charlie is quoted as saying, "It's one of the most admirable capitalistic institutions in the world, and its CEO, Jim Sinegal, is one of the most admirable retailers to ever live on this planet." Next up on Charlie Munger's list of companies is no surprise. It's Berkshire Hathaway. The company acts as an entity for holding ownership or large stakes in other companies. For this reason, his 4,000 plus shares give him indirect ownership of a variety of companies like Apple, Burlington Northern Santa Fe Corporation, and Berkshire Hathaway Energy. His shares in Berkshire Hathaway represent the majority of his portfolio with 95.2%. In a similar vein, Charlie is also benefiting from the success of multiple companies by holding 50,000 shares of his own holding company, the Daily Journal. While the Daily Journal certainly operates its own business, he's making significantly more money from the other entities that he's purchased under the Daily Journal itself, much like Berkshire Hathaway. Costco, Berkshire Hathaway, and the Daily Journal make up Munger's personal portfolio. So, what about the Daily Journal, which he purchased in 1977? While continuing to pump out professional-grade journalism and papers across many states, it now doubles as his own personal investments holding company. The largest position that Charlie oversees in the Daily Journal's investments is none other than Wells Fargo. This lump of stock takes up 36% of their holdings. In terms of dollars, that's a hefty $77.1 million. Munger is a big believer in Wells Fargo's ability to turn massive amounts of profit from handing out loans to customers and raking in the interest. It also manages investments and holds others' wealth in its savings accounts. It is the fourth largest bank in the entire world, and for good reason. In that same vein, Charlie has invested a similarly large chunk of his Daily Journal's portfolio in Bank of America, a chunk registering 44% of the same portfolio. This slice is worth $94.8 million, an incredible amount on its own. It seems Munger has a soft spot for the banking industry and its business model. Wait, scratch that. It's not a soft spot. Let's call it love. Charlie Munger has, you guessed it, another bank in Daily Journal's portfolio with $7.4 million in US Bank Corp, representing 3.5% of the portfolio. It's quite interesting that Charlie Munger invests his own money more or less completely in bank stocks. We hesitate to call it a surprise, given his eye for profitable companies and disowning of diversification. Both he and Warren Buffett share the same perspective on bank stocks.
I think that banks have sold, a good many banks have sold at very reasonable prices. We bought all of a bank in 1969. We bought a bank in Rockford, Illinois. Charlie and I went and we must have looked at a half a dozen banks at that, in a 2 or 3 year period.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we trudged around and we found some very oddball banks that we liked. And they were characterized by very little risk on the asset side and very cheap money on the deposit side. And even Charlie and I could understand that. And low prices, incidentally, too. And then they passed the Bank Holding Company Act in 1969, and they killed off our chances to do anything further in buying all of banks. So we look at banks. We will own bank stocks from time to time in the future. We'll probably buy stock in other banks. We've also seen all kinds of banks ruined.
The last significant slice of this portfolio is a little different. Charlie owns 300,000 shares of Alibaba stock, which gives him a foot into the door of the e-commerce world. This represents 15.5% of the portfolio. There are plenty of different players on that stage, but he's picked his favorite and allocated the rest of his portfolio to it. During last year, Charlie Munger was actively purchasing Alibaba shares for Daily Journal Corporation portfolio. The last purchase was made in the last quarter of 2021. Munger defended this investment in interviews and was not worried with steep price decline of Baba stock. However, in the recent SEC filing, it was shown that investments in Alibaba were cut in half. 302,060 shares were sold in the first quarter of 2022. Charlie Munger declined to comment about this decision. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe to our channel so we can continue to be a resource on your journey. Now, if you want to learn more about the money-making guys, watch this video with the 6 principles that made Warren Buffett a billionaire. See you next time.